I love you.
What's going on, everybody? This is Mike Hughes, and you're listening to the Shy Kid and Everything Chicago Sports Related podcast. We're breaking down everything Chicago Bears tonight because we have a lot to unpack. Ryan Poles is getting busy with less than a week post-Super Bowl performance. We already have some Chicago Bears news, so let's get right into it. Obviously, if you're popping in, you've seen the title of this episode, you've seen what's going on throughout the media. Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair, two former pillars of the once 2018 NFC North champions, are gone. They were both been released by the Chicago Bears today, saving up $30 million in cap space that they would have been due in 2024 if they remained on the roster. Ryan Poles is making moves. Ryan Poles is doing stuff that a lot of people are scared to do, getting rid of the veteran key pieces that were once huge pillars to this organization. Cody Whitehair being drafted in 2016. He's been here for 8 seasons. Crazy to say that because it feels like just yesterday him and Jordan Howard and company were just drafted and brought into Chicago. Eddie Jackson, alongside Mitchell Trubisky, Adam Shaheen and company, were brought in 2017. He's been here. He's been a pillar for the first 3 years in Chicago from 2017 to 2019, especially that 2018 season. I mean, you were looking at a guy who had the potential to be the next Ed Reed. And I don't mean that in being biased or saying that he currently is at that stage. I'm saying that 2018 season, 7 interceptions, 3 pick sixes, the best safety in all of football and a Pro Bowl All-Pro player. That was a guy I looked at and said, man, we got one. We got the nickname Bo Jack. We're looking at somebody who's going to be the next Bo Jackson, the next Deion Sanders, the next primetime, the next biggest thing, the hottest thing since pants with pockets. And the second he got paid, the man couldn't tackle a fucking chair. It was absolutely ridiculous, but it's real. You know what I mean? We have to be real about the situations. Cody Whitehair, along that conversation, was a great guard and center for the Chicago Bears very early on, but injuries derailed his career. Unfortunately, for guys like Eddie, you go through multiple defensive schemes through Vic Fangio to Matt Eberflus to Chuck Pagano to Sean Desai. And then obviously for a guy like Cody Whitehair, just the continuous revolving door of offensive linemen on that Bears O-line from Sam Mustipher to Lucas Patrick to all these different guys you're trying to bring in, the Jason Peters, there was no solidified offensive line after the year of 2018 for the Chicago Bears, and it was very hard for him to stay healthy in doing so. So yeah, man, I mean, there's a lot of conversations to be had. There's a lot of different things we can talk about today, but I think they're all positive, especially when you talk about the cutting of 2. I think, to be honest, if we're going to sit up here today and act like Ryan Poles, got rid of our fan favorites, and I don't see it that way. We were okay when he got rid of Khalil Mack, so I have no problem with getting rid of Eddie Jackson. It saves up $30 million that we would have had to pay the 2 combined. I believe it's $32 million in 2024. So, it's a positive, to be completely real. It's honestly going to be very interesting to see what Ryan Poles is able to coop up in free agency this year. And I think that's one of the biggest questions right now is what is free agency going to look like? So I think that's our first topic for tonight. Obviously, you save up around $30 million. Obviously, you're going to have to pay them off a certain amount that they're guaranteed at some point. But I believe you're going to save over $25 million by getting rid of both Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. So that leaves you with the Jalen Johnson question. You're trying to free up all this money for what? You know what I mean? You have your pass rush. You have everything you want in a wide receiver core, presumably going to get another wide receiver in the draft, whether that's, a Dunze or that's Marvin Harrison Jr. or Neighbors or whoever. We're definitely going to go wide receiver in the draft. I think you're crazy to think if they don't. But it's going to be a lot of fun to see what could potentially happen from a free agency perspective, and that's where Jalen Johnson is in the conversation. Obviously, you don't want to franchise tag a guy like Jalen. You want to get him paid immediately to show him that we trust him the same way he trusts us in this organization. Obviously, we saw him with a couple interceptions throughout, or a few interceptions interceptions throughout his Pro Bowl 2023 season. He's taking it to the house and he's letting you know I need to get paid. He's letting everybody in the industry know. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think the biggest reason you get rid of Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair is to bring in a guy like Jalen Johnson. That's really the big picture right now to me. You want to free up that money to be able to prevent a franchise tag. You don't want to franchise tag everybody every single year. It really kind of ruffles some feathers, especially when guys have phenomenal seasons. It's one thing if you can't pay them, but the Chicago Bears have money coming out of their ass right now, so I definitely don't see that being a problem. But it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that could potentially go down. I've also heard rumors that they could potentially at some point throughout this offseason go after a guy like Hassan Reddick. Obviously, he's 29 years old, still with the Eagles. The pass rush is absolutely phenomenal over there. But a lot of questions over there about whether he or not he wants to remain with the organization. So if you could potentially pair up Tremaine Edmonds, a TJ Edwards, and then you throw in Hassan Reddick alongside also a Montez Sweat, I think you're in a very good position. So that's a big part of why you free up this money. You try to get guys who aren't really producing or aren't going to be a part of the long-term continuity that you're trying to build. So I love that. Absolutely love that. I think it's going to be great for the Chicago Bears moving forward. But before we, obviously get into everything else, free agency, and also talk about, Jalen Johnson, Fields versus Caleb, and so much more, I do want to give our love to Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. Thank you so much for the best 7 and 8 year tenure that you could have potentially gave us. I understand, there were highs and there were lows, and there were real high highs and there were really low lows. But at the same time, man, you understand it's a business. Monsters of the Midway forever. You know what I mean? Like what they were able to do in 2018 was absolutely incredible. And I know there was no playoff win. I know they didn't go to the Super Bowl. They didn't even win an NFC championship, but that 12-4 squad was what helped save, in my opinion, a Bears fan base that has been deprived of great football. And that was great football all around. The number one defense, the coach of the year, the trick play offense with all the different plays, Santa's sleigh, the refrigerator stuff. I mean, it was beautiful. And it was one hell of a year, and I'll never forget it. An 18-year-old Mike Hughes will never forget it. But yeah, man, I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what could potentially happen and how these things can potentially change the outlook on free agency, because obviously the Bears already have a lot of money going into this, but now you have even more. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. The biggest thing I want to see out of free agency is Jalen Johnson to resign, though. Like I said earlier, you get rid of Eddie Jackson, you get rid of Cody Whitehair, you're freeing up over $30 million from that for the 2024 season. You already have a shitload of money prior to that. And Jalen Johnson's one of those guys that I feel like understands his worth. And I think the Bears organization understands it as well. So if you're going to make these types of moves, you better spend that money accordingly. I'm not looking forward to respectfully, because I know he just made an amazing catch, I'm not looking for Hardman. I'm not looking for, tier 3, tier 2 wide receivers. I'm looking for our lockdown CB1 in guy like Jalen Johnson. And that's really where I'm at with it. So I would love to see that. Again, like we said, Hassan Reddick, maybe, you go after another guy like Chase Young in free agency. Who knows? Potentially, there's a lot of different conversations that are floating around. But we have the money now, and we already had it prior to that. So we have even more. The rich get richer. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get into this, though. I know my guy Chris is in the comments right now. He said, what hat is that? It's the spring training 2024 Chicago Cubs hat. I got this on Valentine's Day. So it was really dope. It was literally probably my favorite hat that the Cubs have made. I believe you can get them at every store right now, if I'm not mistaken. But it's tight, bro. It is tough. I cannot lie. It's probably my favorite Cubs hat that they've dropped in several years. I think prior to that, I would probably say, I believe it was the 2016 and the 2017 St. Patrick's Day hat. It was the darker green, but the super dark green on the brim, and the top was just like a little lighter dark green. But it was super tough. It was super tough. I'll have to pop that one in live one day. But yeah, man, just getting back into it. We sit here every day and we contemplate and question, what's going to potentially happen with the number 1 overall pick. How is it going to affect the future of the Chicago Bears organization? And I think it's an important question. I think these are conversations that not a lot of us are ready for. I think at the end of the day, we have to understand that it is a business and there is financials involved. But I want to paint this picture, and I understand, it's a huge mark. It's a huge mark to be comparing them to, and I'm not trying to compare the two whatsoever. But what I'm tired of hearing from the media, and what I'm tired of hearing all over social media, is if you draft Caleb Williams, it resets the window clock for a Super Bowl contending team. You get a rookie quarterback contract, and you don't have to pay Justin Fields. But here's my thing: whether it's Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, or any quarterback, I think it's really important to have that realistic conversation that if this is QB1, if this is the guy that you want to be a part of your franchise, it shouldn't matter how much he's getting paid whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see the Kansas City Chiefs see Patrick Mahomes' rookie contract coming up and say, nah, we're not going to keep him because, we don't want to pay Pat because that's going to mess up our Super Bowl window. What makes you a Super Bowl caliber team forever and always is going to be who your starting quarterback is. I don't care who you are. This is the 21st century. It's 2024, and we are rocking out in the era of gunslinging, elite, two-way level quarterbacks. That's just the reality. The quarterback situation right now for the Chicago Bears is in dire desperation of finding a franchise quarterback. But here's the thing: if Caleb Williams comes into Chicago, right, and he's the guy, 4 years later, are you just going to get rid of him because you want to reset the window clock of the Super Bowl era? Like, I don't want to hear those conversations anymore. Look at Patrick Mahomes. Look at what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do for the Kansas City Chiefs organization since getting paid over $300 million. Over $300 million this man is paid. I believe over $400 million, if I'm not mistaken. And you're going to sit up here and tell me that we can't pay Justin Fields because, we need to draft a rookie quarterback to reset the clock so that we can get a rookie contract and we'll have better chances of winning the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. If your quarterback is the guy, pay him. Now, if you don't think that's Justin Fields, that's perfectly fine. But don't use that argument of, rookie quarterback deal is better. Of course it is. That makes sense. You're bringing in more guys to help, and you're also looking at other factors into it, bringing in guys for the offensive line, more weapons on offense, more weapons on defense. It makes sense. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, those 4 years are going to expire on Caleb Williams. So if by that logic, you're going to tell me, nah, we definitely need to move on from him until we can get a rookie contract. Okay, well then what happens in 4 years when Caleb wins 2 MVPs in a Super Bowl? Are you just not going to pay him? Like, that's my thing. We're watching time and time again Patrick Mahomes prove the doubters wrong. Flying through the AFC with Rice, with Kadarius Toney. And Rice is no scrub. Don't get it twisted. But let's not sit up here and act like Russ is the hottest thing since pants with pockets. Like, that's just not the case. So you have to be legitimate in understanding why you pay these guys. You pay these guys because they make you Super Bowl contenders. That's the reality. Also, this is a number 1 overall pick we're talking about. This guy's not getting paid pocket change. You know what I mean? Like, he's making solid money. So what are we talking about? But yeah, man, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions about what's going to happen, and that's really the one that kind of grinds my gears the most is the salary conversation. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to sit up here and act like Justin Fields is getting paid $400 million. He's not about to become the highest paid quarterback of all time. Now, is the Daniel Jones contract definitely going to change that situation? And Justin can demand at least $200 million? I would imagine so. But still, at the end of the day, man, I mean, you got enough rookies on this team. You got enough guys on cheap deals. DJ Moore is on a relatively cheap deal. You got to utilize that. But it's real. It's real, man. Hey, what's going on, Jay? We got JF1 in the chat. I love that. But man, I think at the end of the day, no matter what direction you're going to, you have to look at that quarterback, that individual, as the long-term solution. You know what I'm saying? Like, that, you cannot sit up here today and convince me that, Justin Fields isn't the guy, but maybe Caleb isn't either. Like, no, you need to be sure. Because here's the thing. The reality of the situation is this. I'm going to put a scenario in your head, and if you think I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this is how I feel about it. If you draft Caleb Williams, if you're Ryan Poles, that is either the greatest decision or the worst decision in your entire career, for the simple fact of looking at the other entities that you could have had. If Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up being a top 3 wide receiver of all time, and Caleb Williams is nothing more than maybe he spends 4 or 5 years on the Bears, that's a fuck up. If you have Justin Fields move on, maybe it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe it's the Atlanta Falcons, the New England Patriots, wherever he may land, and he becomes an elite level quarterback, or even a CJ Stroud, who's already had success, already led the Houston Texans to the playoffs in his rookie year, who you could have drafted last year with the number 1 overall pick. Say a guy like Bryce Young or Jaden Daniels or a Drake May potentially pans out, and Caleb Williams is anything less than elite. That's your ass. That is your ass if you're Ryan Poles. That's the reality. So you need to be 100% sure that this is the guy. Because like I said, if Marvin Harrison ends up being a top 3 wide receiver of all time, if Justin Fields turns into an elite level quarterback, or CJ Stroud, Drake May, Bryce Young, any of these guys end up being dual threat elite level quarterbacks, and Caleb Williams is anything less than elite, Ryan Poles is fired the second Caleb Williams' contract is up. Period. Maybe even before. Like that's real. That's really where I'm at with it right now. So, I mean, if you're going to sit up here today and tell me that you believe in Caleb over Justin, that's perfectly fine, because I'm a fan. You're a fan. You know, we're all just sitting here and we're having fun and we're predicting what's going to happen. But if Ryan Poles has a single question about the number 1 overall pick and what quarterback to go after, that should be your answer. If you're questioning if Caleb Williams is going to be the best quarterback out of this draft, don't draft him. Not at 1, at least. You know what I mean? Like, that's Justin Fields is a perfect example. So many teams dropped on him. He went from 1A and 1B with Trevor Lawrence to going, all the way 11 or 12? Like, that's a safe place if you're the Chicago Bears to draft Justin Fields. Hey, this kid was thought out to be the greatest quarterback coming out of this draft class next to Trevor Lawrence. We got him at 11. We got him at 12. That's a perfect place. That is a perfect place for this guy. But if you draft Caleb at 1 and you're going to tell me that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback out of this class, or a Drake May potentially is the most talented, like, what are we doing? What is the reality that works in any scenario? I'm not a hater, you know what I mean? If Caleb Williams works out, that's awesome. You know what I mean? That's great. I love it. But at the end of the day, I'm a Bears fan, and all I know is pain. Baby, that's all I've been raised to understand is shit quarterback play. I have not once seen an elite quarterback walk in through these doors. I'll do you one better. I've never seen a Bears quarterback win the hearts of the city. You want to say, hey, Justin did? No. Because here's what happened. We went from we want Fields to we want Caleb in a span of 2.5 seconds. What the fuck happened? Caleb hasn't played a single game since, November? Like, where am I right now, bro? Like, I don't understand, because we do this every single year. We sit up here and the offseason happens, and then everybody starts overhyping guys. Guys on draft boards start climbing. I don't know what the NFL and all of the media world is convinced about. They always pick some random white boy and just overvalue his draft stock. It goes from Mitchell Trubisky to Zach Wilson to Kenny Pickett, and now it's Drake May. Like, let's be real. Drake May is not great. Drake May is not great whatsoever. I'm not trying to sit up here and disrespect him and his game. I'm sure he's a solid quarterback. I'm sure he will be in the league for 5 to 10 years. But the reality is this, bro. You're playing at the University of North Carolina, and you ain't playing basketball. So I know for a fact you are not being developed the way you should be at a specific organization, whether that's Ohio State, whether that's Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. There's certain organizations that are great at developing quarterbacks, and there's other organizations where you look at them and you go, that is exactly why the only quarterbacks to make it out of UNC as of late have been Sam Howell and Mitchell Trubisky. And here's another white boy who's undersized and wearing number 10 that's going to sell me that he is the number 1 quarterback out of this draft. Like, I'm sorry. You're not going to tell me this. Every single year they pick a white boy and they say, he's the guy. Listen, I'm white. I can say it. You know what I mean? Like, but they do it every single year. Jaden Daniels wins a fucking Heisman, and they don't want to talk about him. It's a race thing. Like, I don't like having those conversations, but when 2 of the top quarterbacks are of African-American descent, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, and you're going to sit up here and tell me that Drake May, who hasn't done anything remotely elite at the University of North Carolina, is the guy? because he reminds you of Justin Herbert, because he reminds you of Aaron Rodgers. Oh, so he just reminds you of other white dudes who play quarterback, so he's your guy. Even though I haven't seen him hit somebody in their chest all season long, everything up here, everything's down here, everybody's trying to stretch out to make plays for him. I haven't seen this man. I mean, come on, half of the highlights, bro, he's got wide receivers who have no coverage on him. There is no DBs in half of his highlights because he's out there making scramble plays, and that's cute. That's fine. But when you have guys like Snead in the Super Bowl going at you, when you have the Richard Shermans of the world, when you have the Jair Alexanders of the world going after you, I mean, what are we doing? It just doesn't make sense to me, bro. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I think at the end of the day, bro, I mean, it is what it is. We're going to have those conversations all off season long. I don't really think we're going to be legitimately taking a shot at a guy like Drake May, but you never know. You know what I mean? If we trade down the two, anything can really happen. And I do think at the end of the day, man, you have to look at it and you have to look at all options. So I'm not mad at that. You know what I mean? And I love this comment right here. Caleb Williams at 1 and Malik Neighbors at 9. I wouldn't be mad at that either. You know what I mean? I heard Barstool actually talking about it earlier today. They were kind of getting into it and really just breaking down what the future might look like for the Chicago Bears if they trade Justin Fields. And I saw one scenario where they said, would you trade number 9 and Justin Fields to the New England Patriots organization for number 3? And that was interesting to me because then you potentially have a situation to where, let's say you take Caleb at 1, Drake May goes to the Commanders, and then you get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. Or would you rather trade him to the Steelers, Justin Fields that is, and have 1, 9, and 20? Really, for me, I think that's a simple one. I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think it's spicy. I think you really have to just look at that for what it is. I understand, quality over quantity, but sometimes you have to look at it for what it is. There's a lot of holes on this Bears team. So you have to look at the quality in which you're getting. If you're getting Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're going to tell me that that's how you're going to rock out the next 4 or 5 years, I'm with it. I'm with that. You know what I mean? Because I don't know who we're going to draft at number 20. I don't know who that would be. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know if that's going to be an elite prospect. We don't know if that's just going to be a later round pick. I mean, look at guys like Alexander Leatherwood, who gets taken 20th overall by the Las Vegas Raiders not too long ago, and they end up being busts. I'm not saying that's every situation. You also find a Justin Jefferson that late sometimes. But when you have two guys like Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1 and 3, and you have the potential to do that, we saw the Houston Texans do that with Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud last year. So I think that's really interesting to me if they could potentially get that done. That's all we really got on Bears tonight, baby. We're going to be talking Cubs. We're going to be talking baseball. We got a lot of stuff going on throughout the next couple of days, talking everything baseball. We're going to have some interviews going down. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to stay live on TikTok for a little bit, but we're going to get out of here on all other socials. So if you haven't hit that follow button, definitely smack it for us because it helps us out a lot. We are going to be at spring training as soon as March hits. It's going to be a lot of fun to really get that down and really see what's going on with everything Chicago Cubs. Until then, I'll check y'all out later. Peace.
I love you.